This is a 2009 Dodge Journey, and we're going to be replacing the front struts today. So obviously the first step in this procedure is to remove the front wheel. These are 19 millimeter or 3/4 inch lug nuts. There's two little 13 millimeter bolts over here that secure the brake line and the ABS wire. You're going to want to pull those off. You'll see why later in the video. And this sway bar link, we're going to be replacing the sway bar links, so I'm going to cut the bottom end of the sway bar link off with a torch. If you're not good at this, use a wrench and take your time. I've been doing this a long time, and I just find it's really a time saver if you're good with the gas axe, just to cut the bolt off the end of the sway bar link and knock it out of there. We don't have to remove it from the top because that's going to come out with the strut. Always a good idea, if you do it this way, is to have some water on hand so you can squirt everything down and cool it off afterwards, because you don't want to burn your hand reaching in there. You'll see there's two pinch bolts that hold that strut to the steering knuckle, and those are 21 millimeter. I believe they're 21 millimeter. They're splined on the backside, and there's enough end on it you can tap it with a hammer without damaging the threads. So we're going to pop those out of there. You should be able to wiggle that strut loose. Now you can see how everything's hanging. That's why we needed the slack in those lines. And this is probably the most difficult part of the whole job, accessing the top of the strut. On a lot of cars you won't run into this, but this particular vehicle is a little bit unique, and it's got part of the wiper cowl is in the way, as well as a strut support bar you'll see here in a minute. There's just a bunch of plastic push pins that hold all this stuff together. Here's another view with some of the push pins. There's one there and there's one there, two on the other side. Well, there's supposed to be two, but there was only one on the other side. And these ones you got to get out with you got to remove them with the hood closed. Now, in order to remove the rest of that wiper cowl, you got to pull the wiper arms off. There's a little plastic cap over each one. There's a 15 millimeter nut that secures the wiper arm to the pivot. I have a tool for removing wiper arms, a little puller, but of course I can't find it. So I put the nuts back on, a few threads so I don't damage it, and then I just shock it with a hammer, and that'll usually pop them loose and break the taper, and just like this one right here, and you're able to get the wiper. Don't hit it without the nut on, though. You'll screw the threads up and you'll hate yourself for it. So the passenger one pulled right off of there. The driver's side one, there's not a really good way to get at it. You can't access it with the hood closed, and you can barely get at it with the hood open. I tried to use the same technique as I did on the passenger side to no avail. It just would not come off there. I mean, there just wasn't a good way to get on it without taking the hood off. There was no way to get straight on it. And I don't even know that my wiper remover my puller would fit in there with that hood in the way. I even tried the air hammer to shock it. That didn't work. So eventually I just decided that one could stay, and there was enough flex in the plastic to be able to use a 2x4 to prop it up out of the way. You'll see here in a second. You lift that up, you'll see that there's a 2x4. You'll see that there's a strut bar that runs across as a support. Each side has four 13mm nuts holding it on there. You got to remove that bar to access the nuts underneath it for the strut. We'll just set that out of the way there, and now you can see the three bolts from the strut protruding through the strut housing or the strut tower, and those are 15mm nuts on there. We're going to pull those off, and then right before I pull the last one off, you want to put a hand on that strut because you don't want it to drop down and damage the CV axle or something. So just put your hand down there and catch it as it comes out. Here's the old strut, and we're using Moog brand, which is, in my opinion, the best aftermarket brand. If you're not going to use a factory strut, I would use a Moog. But again, that's just my opinion. I'm sure everyone has their own opinion. Maybe someone likes another brand better, but you can see everything's the same on it. So this is the right side. It's got the tabs in the right location. Everything's right. I'm going to put that strut in. The strut comes with new nuts, so just use the new nuts. Just discard the old ones that were on the old strut. When you put it up in there, just start the threads a couple turns on each bolt. You don't want to tighten it up. You want some wiggle room so when you're lining up the lower end of that strut, it's able to move around. You can tighten those up when you're all done. So with the car back in the air, that's where my belly comes into play right there. Start the bottom bolt first. If you get the bottom bolt in, you can usually rock it and line the top bolt right up. The car will need a front end alignment when this is done because this does change the camber, and it also can affect the toe. When the camber changes, the toe is automatically affected. Those are the two 13mm bolts that hold on the brake hose and the ABS sensor wire. And we're putting brand new sway links on here. Now I bought these from Napa, and I didn't know this prior to buying them, but they didn't have a provision to hold a wrench on the backside to keep the shaft from spinning. So I would not recommend using Napa ones as far as ease of installation goes. I had to use a pair of needle nose vice grips because it's round inside there. Most of them have Torx on the end of them where you can stick a Torx bit, or they're hexed on the backside where you can put a wrench. But these ones didn't come with anything, and if you don't hold them with vice grips, they just spin. Pretty stupid design in my opinion, and I won't be using those ones again. So now we want to throw the tire back on, and we want to put the vehicle down so it rests on its own weight before we tighten those top three strut mount bolts or nuts. So with the car on its own weight, go ahead and tighten up those three nuts, and that is done. It's that easy. Like I said, the hardest part is that wiper cowl. I didn't video putting the wiper cowl back together because I had to go do the other side strut yet after I was done filming this driver's side strut. But it's just the opposite of the disassembly, so you get the idea. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate the support. If this video helped, give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and check out my other videos.